Welcome back to another episode. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention because it doesn't look like a problem from the outside. Being stuck in a relationship rut. Not a breakup, not cheating, not constant fighting. Just waking up one day and realizing, this doesn't feel exciting anymore. You still love them. You still care. You're still showing up. But something feels off. You're not sad enough to leave. You're not happy enough to stay. And that middle space, that's where relationships quietly die. Because no one talks about it. There's no dramatic moment. No. This is it. Conversation. It's just scrolling next to each other in bed, having the same conversations every night, going to sleep, feeling weirdly lonely next to the person you love. And the worst part, you start wondering if you're the problem. You think maybe this is just what long-term relationships are like. Maybe excitement isn't realistic. Maybe I'm asking for too much, and then you feel guilty. Because they're a good partner. Because nothing is technically wrong. Because other people have it worse. So you stay quiet. You settle. You normalize feeling emotionally numb. But here's the thing no one tells you. Love isn't supposed to feel like you're slowly fading out. And no, this episode is not about blowing up your relationship. It's not about leaving impulsively. And it's definitely not about comparing your partner to some fantasy person who doesn't exist. This is about understanding why ruts happen, what they're actually telling you, and how to decide whether this relationship needs work or an ending. Because a rut doesn't always mean the relationship is over. But ignoring it, that's how you wake up 5 years later wondering where the spark and honestly, you went. So if you've been feeling disconnected, if you've been questioning your relationship but don't know why, if you've been telling yourself it's fine when it really doesn't feel fine, stay with me. Because by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly whether this rut is something you can break or something you need to walk away from. Let's get something straight right away. A relationship rut is not the same thing as falling out of love. And it's definitely not the same thing as a bad relationship. A rut is sneaky. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up with red flags and chaos. It shows up quietly. You still text each other. You still say, I love you. You still do the things couples are supposed to do. But the energy is gone. And that's what makes it confusing. Because on paper, everything looks fine. But emotionally, you feel disconnected, bored, or weirdly distant from the person who's right in front of you. A relationship rut happens when connection becomes routine. When presence turns into habit. When effort turns into assumption. You stop asking questions because you think you already know the answers. You stop being curious because you assume nothing has changed. But people are always changing. And when you don't update how you show up for each other, the relationship freezes in time. That's how ruts form. Here's another thing people don't talk about enough. Comfort is amazing until it replaces intention. Comfort without intention turns into complacency. You stop flirting because you think you don't need to. You stop trying because you assume they're not going anywhere. You stop showing desire because life feels busy, stressful, and exhausting. And slowly, the relationship shifts from, I choose you, to, we're just here. That's not romance. That's maintenance mode. And maintenance mode might keep a relationship alive, but it won't make it feel alive. A rut is also not about sex. Even though everyone thinks it is. Yes, sex usually changes. Yes, intimacy often decreases. But that's a symptom, not the cause. The real issue is emotional disconnection. When emotional intimacy drops, physical intimacy follows. Not the other way around. Another major misconception. People think ruts mean passion is unrealistic long term. That excitement is only for the honeymoon phase. That this numb feeling is just how it goes. But that's not true. What actually fades isn't passion. It's presence. It's the way you used to really listen. The way you noticed small changes. The way you cared how your partner felt that day, not just in general. A rut forms when both people start living parallel lives instead of a shared one. Same house. Same bed. Different worlds. And here's the part that hits hardest. You can feel lonely in a relationship and still love the person. That doesn't make you ungrateful. It doesn't make you dramatic. It makes you human. Most people don't realize they're in a rut until they start fantasizing about another version of their life. Not necessarily another person, Just another feeling. Excitement, curiosity, being seen again. And then the guilt kicks in. Because your partner didn't do anything wrong. Because they're a good person. Because leaving feels extreme. So you minimize your feelings. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. You convince yourself to be grateful instead of honest. But ignoring a rut doesn't make it disappear. It just turns it into emotional distance. And emotional distance, over time, turns into resentment, detachment, or indifference. That's why understanding what a rut actually is matters so much. Because a rut isn't the end. But it is a message. It's your relationship telling you something needs attention. And if you listen early, you might be able to change everything. If you ignore it, you'll wake up one day realizing you've been together, but not really with each other for a long time. And that realization, that's way more painful than having an honest conversation early on. This is the part where a lot of people get uncomfortable. Because recognizing the signs means you can't unsee them. And a relationship rut doesn't show up as one big red flag. It shows up as a bunch of small moments you keep brushing off. So let's talk about what those moments actually look like. 1. Your conversations feel transactional. You still talk, all the time. But it's stuff like, what time are you getting home? Did you pay the bill? What do you want for dinner? You're communicating, but you're not connecting. You stop talking about how you feel. You stop asking deeper questions. You stop sharing things that don't have a clear purpose. And slowly, your partner becomes someone you manage life with, not someone you emotionally open up to. That's not because you don't care. It's because somewhere along the way, emotional intimacy stopped feeling necessary. 2. Physical touch becomes automatic or disappears. This one is huge. You still hug, you still kiss. Maybe you still have sex, but it feels routine. Predictable. Almost scheduled. There's less desire and more obligation. And here's the truth. When physical touch loses intention, it loses meaning. It's not about frequency, it's about presence. You can have sex and still feel disconnected. You can cuddle and still feel alone. When intimacy stops feeling intentional, it's a sign the emotional connection needs attention. 3. You spend time together, but in separate worlds. You're in the same room, but not really together. One of you is on your phone. The other is watching something. You're technically hanging out, but there's no real interaction. And this becomes normal. You start calling it quality time, even though it doesn't actually fill you up. You're sharing space, not energy. And over time, that creates distance you don't know how to close. 4. You feel more excited by your fantasy life than your real one. This is the sign people feel the most ashamed of. You start imagining a different version of your life. A different routine. A different feeling. Not necessarily a different partner. Just a version of you that feels more alive. And then the guilt hits. You think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy? They're a great partner. But fantasizing isn't betrayal. It's information. It's your mind telling you something is missing. Ignoring that doesn't make you loyal. It makes you emotionally checked out. 5. You feel lonely, even though you're not alone. This is the one people struggle to put into words. You're in a relationship. You're not single. You're not abandoned. But you still feel lonely. Because loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about not feeling seen. And when you stop feeling seen by your partner, you start pulling away emotionally, even if you're still physically there. That kind of loneliness hurts more than being single. 6. You stop bringing things up because it feels not worth it. At some point, you notice yourself thinking, it's fine. It's not a big deal, I don't want to start something. So you stay quiet. Not because you don't care, but because you're tired. And when you stop speaking up, resentment starts building quietly. A rut thrives in silence. 7. You romanticize the past more than the present. You think about how it used to feel. The excitement, the curiosity, the effort. And the contrast between then and now feels heavy. You're not stuck in the past because it was perfect. You're stuck there because it felt alive. And the present feels flat. That doesn't mean the relationship is broken, but it does mean something needs to change. The hard truth. Here's the part that matters most. You don't need all of these signs to be in a rut. 1 or 2 is enough, and noticing them doesn't mean you're about to leave, it means you're paying attention. A rut isn't a failure. It's feedback. The danger isn't feeling disconnected. The danger is pretending you don't. Because when ruts go ignored, they turn into indifference. And indifference is what actually ends relationships long before the breakup conversation ever happens. This is the point in the episode where things get real. Because everything up until now has been about recognizing the rut. But this is about you. Before you try to fix the relationship, before you have a big conversation, before you panic or make any decisions, you need to ask yourself one question, and actually sit with the answer. Do I want to revive this relationship, or am I just afraid to let it go? Not, should I stay? Not, can this work? Not, what will everyone think? Adjust that, because those two motivations feel similar. But they lead to completely different choices. A lot of people say they want to work on the relationship, but what they really mean is, I'm scared of starting over. I'm scared of being alone. I'm scared I'll regret leaving. And fear is a terrible foundation for love. Staying because you're afraid doesn't make you loyal. It makes you stuck. And here's the tricky part. You can deeply care about someone and still not want to continue the relationship. Those two things can exist at the same time. Wanting to revive a relationship feels different than being afraid to end it. When you want to revive it, you still feel curiosity, you still feel emotional pull. You still want to understand your partner, even if things feel off, there's energy there. Fear-based staying feels heavy. It feels like, I should be grateful. It's not that bad. I don't want to hurt them. Those are not reasons to stay. Those are reasons to avoid discomfort. And avoidance is how ruts turn into years of quiet dissatisfaction. Another way to tell the difference. Ask yourself, if nothing changed, would I still choose this relationship in a year? Not if they promised to try harder. Not if things magically improved. Exactly as it is right now. That question cuts through the noise. Because love isn't about potential. It's about reality. And choosing someone based on who they might become, instead of who they are right now, is a fast way to lose yourself. This question also forces you to look at something uncomfortable. Are you staying for the relationship, or for the life it gives you? The routine, the stability, the shared history, the safety. Those things matter, but they're not the same as connection. A lot of people confuse comfort with love, and comfort is beautiful, until it becomes a cage. Here's something no one says enough. You don't owe a relationship forever just because it was good to you once. People grow. Needs change. Timing shifts. That doesn't erase what you shared. It just means you're being honest about where you are now. And honesty is kinder than staying halfway in. One more question, and this one is important. Am I willing to show up differently, or do I just want them to change? Because reviving a relationship requires effort from both sides. If you're secretly hoping they'll fix everything while you stay the same, that's not revival. That's avoidance. But if you're willing to be vulnerable, be uncomfortable, take responsibility for your part, then the relationship might actually have a real chance. And if you're not, that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you self-aware. Here's the truth: clarity is more loving than confusion. Dragging things out because you're unsure does more damage than making an honest decision. Whether you stay or leave, this question brings you back to yourself. And once you're honest about why you're staying, everything else becomes clearer. Because you can't fix a rut until you know whether your heart is still in it, or whether you're just afraid of the ending. Alright, so now that we've recognized the rut and asked the hard question, whether you want to stay or leave, let's get into the part most people skip. How do you actually get out of a rut? Because here's the thing. Recognizing a problem doesn't solve it. Talking about it doesn't solve it, you need action. I'm going to break it down for you in 5 steps that actually work. And I mean real, no BS steps that require honesty, effort, and a little discomfort. 1. Have the uncomfortable conversation without drama. Nothing changes if you don't talk. But here's the trick: you cannot blame or shame. That's a trap. Saying, "You don't make me happy anymore," is lazy, and it leads to defensiveness, not change. Instead, try something like, "I feel like we've been disconnected lately, and I want to understand what's going on." Notice the difference. You're taking responsibility for your feelings. You're opening the door for mutual discovery. A couple examples. You notice your partner has stopped initiating affection. Instead of accusing, you say, I miss the way we used to connect. Can we talk about how we've been feeling? You feel bored with the routine. Instead of sulking, you say, I feel like we've fallen into autopilot. How can we shake things up together? The point: curiosity over blame. Curiosity reignites connection. Blame burns bridges. 2. Change the dynamic, not just the scenery. A vacation or a fancy dinner isn't enough. You need to change the way you interact daily. Examples: try a new hobby together. Something neither of you is great at. Fail together. Laugh together. Break the scripts. If dinner and Netflix is your default, mix it up. Go on random walks. Cook something ridiculous. Dance in the living room. Switch roles. Let your partner plan something you usually do. Shake the predictability. Novelty triggers dopamine. Intentional novelty triggers emotional connection. Routine kills both. 3. Get your individual life back. This is huge. I can't stress it enough. A relationship rut often happens because both people stop being full, interesting humans on their own. When you stop growing personally, you stop bringing fresh energy into the relationship. Ask yourself, am I still pursuing my goals? Do I still have friends and hobbies I love? Am I still excited by my own life? If the answer is no, your partner is left filling a void they didn't create. And that creates tension. Tip: reinvest in yourself first. When you feel alive individually, you bring magnetism back to the relationship automatically. 4. Stop living in we mode all the time. Here's the secret most couples ignore. You have to love yourself first to keep love alive. Being we constantly, always together, always aligned, always predictable, kills excitement. Step back. Do things alone. Explore. Travel. Take a class. Reconnect with friends. When you start choosing yourself, your partner notices. Desire grows. Curiosity comes back. This isn't selfish, it's strategic. The more independent you are, the more attractive and interesting you become, and the more intentional the relationship becomes. 5. Reintroduce desire. Without pressure. Desire isn't forced. Desire doesn't respond to guilt trips or expectations. Start small. Eye contact that lingers. Random touches with intention. Flirting like you're not supposed to. Sex will follow if the connection is real. But forcing it, that just turns into obligation. Flirt like when you first met. Laugh like you used to. Tease each other. Build tension. Bring play back. Because let's be honest, the sex was never the problem. The emotional spark was. Once that's alive again, intimacy follows naturally. Alright, we've talked about what a rut is. We've talked about recognizing the signs. We've asked the hard question. Do you want to stay, or are you just afraid to leave? We've even laid out how to actually fix it. But here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Sometimes. A rut isn't a warning. It's a red flag. It's a signal that it's time to walk away. And before anyone gets defensive, let me be clear. Walking away doesn't make you selfish. It makes you self-aware. It makes you honest. 1. When effort feels one-sided, you've tried. You've shown up. You've started conversations. You've flirted, changed your habits, even leaned into discomfort. And they haven't. If you feel like you're doing all the emotional heavy lifting, guess what? That rut isn't temporary. That's pattern behavior. Here's the truth. You can't pull someone into intimacy or connection if they're not willing to meet you halfway. 2. When emotional closeness doesn't return. You've worked on yourself. You've invested energy, attention, curiosity. But the spark isn't back. The conversations are still surface level. The connection still feels empty. That's not a rut. That's indifference. And indifference is toxic if you care about being seen, wanted, and alive in your relationship. 3. When the relationship makes you feel smaller. A healthy relationship grows you. It challenges you. It encourages curiosity, play, and desire. If your relationship feels like a cage, like you're just maintaining life instead of living, it's a sign. Ruts sometimes start as boredom, but if staying makes you shrink into yourself, it's not worth it. 4. When you're emotionally checked out. Here's a brutal one. You might still love them. You might still care. But if you notice yourself thinking, I don't really care if we talk tonight. I feel more alive when I'm alone or with someone else. I can't remember the last time I actually felt excited about them. Then it's not a rut anymore. It's a signal. A sign that your energy has left the relationship, and the longer you stay, the more you erase yourself. 5. When fear is the only reason you stay. We talked about this earlier. Fear is a terrible reason to stay. Fear of being alone, fear of judgment, fear of regret. Here's the truth. Staying in a relationship because of fear is not love. It's avoidance. And avoidance kills more relationships than lack of attraction ever will. 6. When your what ifs outnumber your yes moments. If you find yourself daydreaming more about life without them than with them. If the what if I left thoughts are louder than I'm so glad I stayed. Listen carefully. Your intuition is screaming the answer. Ruts that won't fix themselves often lead to long-term dissatisfaction. And long-term dissatisfaction is not the life you signed up for. The reality. Here's the thing. Walking away doesn't erase your past. It doesn't make your love meaningless. It just means you chose honesty over comfort. You chose self-respect over routine. You chose clarity over confusion. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes compatibility, timing, and energy don't align anymore. And staying for nostalgia, habit, or guilt isn't loyalty. It's resignation. If you've done the work, if you've reflected, communicated, tried, and still feel disconnected, small and invisible, then leaving isn't failure, it's liberation. Because being in a relationship should feel alive, not like you're surviving. It should spark curiosity, desire, and joy. Not terrible. And leaving isn't the end. It's the beginning of finding the connection you actually deserve. Alright, let's wrap this up. Here's the truth. Being stuck in a relationship rut doesn't mean you've failed. It doesn't mean your partner has failed. It just means something needs attention. And now you're paying attention. A rut is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that connection is a choice. Love isn't just about showing up. It's about showing up fully, intentionally, and with curiosity. If you've realized you're in a rut, you have 3 choices. 1. Do the work. Talk, flirt, change the routine, reinvest in yourself. Bring back curiosity, desire, and play. 2. Decide to stay intentionally. Stay because you want to, not because you're afraid to leave. Stay because the relationship energizes you, not drains you. 3. Walk away with clarity. Leave if the connection is gone, if effort is one-sided, or if fear is the only thing keeping you there. Walk away honestly, with dignity, and without regret. Because here's the real kicker. Life is too short to settle for numbness. Your love, your energy, your curiosity. They're too valuable to waste on a relationship that doesn't make you feel alive. So whether you stay or go, make it intentional. Stop coasting. Stop apologizing for how you feel. Stop ignoring your own needs. And before you go, if this episode hit home, if you felt seen, or if you thought, yeah, I needed to hear that, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Because we talk about the things people avoid, but everyone feels. Like the video, share it with someone who's stuck in that it's fine relationship, and drop a comment. I want to know what part of this hit you the hardest. The right relationship doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like excitement, curiosity, growth, desire. And you deserve nothing less than that. I'll see you in the next episode.